Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming a tier ranking of every book that I read in 2024. I debated whether or not I was going to do this video for a while, especially since did a vlog recently, but we ended up getting like a huge snowstorm where I lived. We got like 10 to 12 inches of snow, so we're all kind of snowed in and I couldn't go to work today because of it. So I figured, what better way to spend my time than to show you all how many books I read in 2024 and tier rank all of them. I originally got this idea from Sarah Caroli here on YouTube. I believe she's done this type of format of videos for a couple of years now, and I just thought it was a really fun idea and I kind of wanted to try it out. So be sure to check out her video because that's where I got the inspiration for this video. But I read 62 or 63 books this year, which is probably the most books that I have read since probably like my childhood when I was like in school reading books. So I'm gonna hop right in and get to it. I'm gonna hit screen record on my computer and we'll get started. I'm going to talk about the kind of tier ranking system that I came up with. The top tier being Wish I Could Read for the First Time Again. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. The second one is Loved but Not Top Tier. The third one would be Would Recommend but Don't Ever Think About. The fourth one is Was Hoping for More. The next one is Forgettable. And then the last one is Yikes. So I feel like those are pretty self-explanatory, and let's go ahead and hop in and get these books ranked. The first books that we have sitting here are all a part of the Wingfeather Saga, which I feel like I haven't talked about the Wingfeather Saga a ton on this channel, but it is like for me a 5-star series and one that I would recommend to anybody. I would liken it to kind of the Chronicles of Narnia. You're following these kids, this family, as they kind of work through conflict and growing up. It's also hard because there's a lot of high stakes and a lot of tough things happen to these kids, but I think it's so valuable. Similarly to Chronicles of Narnia, it also has kind of like Christian themes woven throughout, but it's not necessarily like a Christian book, but I do feel like it has so many valuable life lessons for that like anybody can learn. And if you haven't read this, I would highly recommend it. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the first book in the series, which is The Edge of Darksea of Darkness. I would put this in Loved but Not Top Tier. Some of these books in the series to me are better than others, and so I'll rank them accordingly, but overall it's a 5-star series for me. Next is Norther Be Eaten, and this is Wish I Could Read for the First Time Again. This is the book that like hooked me into the series 100%. I read the first one, thought it was cute. The second one was available. I dove into it, and after reading that one, I was like, I'm in. The next is The Monster in the Hollows, and I would put this in Loved but Not Top Tier. And then the last one is Warden and the Wolf King, and that is I Wish I Could Read for the First Time Again. To me, that it wrapped up the whole series so perfectly, and I just thought it was incredible and I loved it. It was definitely like a bit of a heart-wrenching ending, but like it was so good and so perfect. And you guys, I just can't recommend this series enough. It's so good. They also have The Wingfeather Tales, which is a collection of short stories based off of the world. I think it was written by like a group of authors, like it wasn't written by like the original author, and I would put this in Forgettable. Not because it's bad. I think it's hard to rate a collection of short stories because some I liked more than others, but I really don't feel like this added anything to the original series for me. Next I have Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. This is based on a true story, and it's also a movie. How I originally heard about this story was watching the movie a long time ago, and if you don't know this story, it's so inspiring. Look it up, read this book, please. It's incredible. I think about this man's story so often, and just the things that he overcame and went through, and how the Lord like impacted his life, and just the hardships he went through was so inspiring to learn about, and how he really overcame things. I genuinely wish, I don't say this about nonfiction very often, but I would put this in I Wish I Could Read for the First Time Again. Next we have The Ranger's Apprentice, The Ruins of Gorlin. I think that's the first one in the series, and I'll kind of again group all of these together. The Ranger's Apprentice is one of those series, I think I've talked about it before, where it's one of those where the books are usually typically readily available, and if I just need something that I know I'll like and I want to pick something up that's short, easy to read, and I know I'll like, I'll pick up the next one in this series, and it's always pretty good. I don't usually think about them very often, but I always like them. So I'll put these in, I'll put the first one in loved but not top tier, mainly because it kind of hooked me into the series. But for the rest of them, I'll probably put them in would recommend but don't really ever think about. But I do really like them. I also read Eragon this year. I kind of don't know why. I think it was available on Libby and I needed something to read, and I was like, that's a series that I know of and it's well known and well loved and I should try it. And it was actually really good. I don't know if I'll continue it, which I don't really know why, because I really did love the concept. I think the books are just huge, and I don't know, I have other books that I kind of want to read, so I don't know if I'll continue this series, but I really liked it and I would recommend it. I just don't really think about it. Next we have Rebecca, and this is probably, I think, the only classic that I read this year. I really liked it. I would probably put it in recommend but don't ever think about, but I would especially recommend if you are wanting to get into classics and you like don't know where to start. To me, this one's very approachable. The setting is really cool. The setting almost feels like its own like entity and a part of the story, and there's also like some mystery. The characters are really awesome, and it's just, I would highly recommend this book. I thought it was really good, and if you love Taylor Swift, she read this book and it was an inspiration to some, I think, a song that she wrote. I also read The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which is an Agatha Christie mystery. I think I've only read 2 Agatha Christie mysteries, and usually I think they're pretty good. This one, I will say I was hoping for more. This book introduces Hercule Poirot, which is kind of her famous character that she created, who's a detective, and he has lots of books. You don't necessarily have to read those books in order. You can kind of read them in any order, but this is like the first book that she came out with that had like him in it, or at least like it was his first case. And so I had read a couple of other books by her, and so I was excited to read like his first case, and it just kind of, I was hoping for more. Next we have The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I wish I could read this for the first time again. Would it crush my soul just as much as it did the first time? Yeah, but I would read it again. I put off reading this book for years, and I don't know why. I knew I would like it. I love historical fiction. This book is so highly rated, so well loved and highly talked about, that I was like, I know I'm gonna like it. I just never read it. And then I finally picked it up, and I'm so glad I did. I am excited to read more of her works in 2025. She's a wonderful author. And if you don't think you'll like historical fiction, pick up a Kristen Hanna book, because I think you'll be surprised. Oh, we have The Siege of Mackinac, which is another Ranger's Apprentice. I'll put that in would recommend but don't ever think about. I'll put that in. There we go. Next we have Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar, and if you don't know who the Duggars are, they're kind of well-known family. They were in the show 19 Kids and Counting, which I actually grew up kind of watching. So I was curious about her story and kind of what her and her husband have gone through since getting married and kind of creating their own family, and it was really good. I would put it in would recommend but don't ever think about. The Case of the Stolen Goddess, yikes. I'm not even gonna talk about it, don't read it. Next we have Percy Jackson and the Wrath of the Triple Goddess. I just recently read this one and I really liked it. I would put this in, I don't know, because I guess I don't really think about it. Actually, I'll put it in loved but not top tier. To me, this was better than The Chalice of the Gods. That one was like a disappointment for me. But this one felt more like a Percy Jackson book, and it kind of made me really excited for the next one. So I'll put it in loved but not top tier. Next we have Stephen King, 11/22/63. This one I was really hoping for more, which is disappointing. I don't know, this book just didn't, it was too long. The original concept of the story of like what would happen if like the JFK assassination never occurred is really intriguing, but I feel like half of the book isn't even really about that. Like it is about that, but it like kind of isn't. I don't know. It it was way too long. Like, the story could have been half the length. I just, it wasn't my favorite, and I really thought I would like it, and I just kind of really didn't. Next, we have Vow of Thieves, and this is the second book in a duology. I read the first book. This is the first book that I finished in 2024, and oh my goodness. Wish I could read for the first time again. This fantasy series is the best fantasy. I guess it's technically a duology. Best I've ever read. Would recommend to anybody. Incredible. Forced proximity. The relationship is beautiful. It's no spice. You guys, it's just incredible. Next, we have Finding Me by Viola Davis, and this one I have a really hard time with. Again, on Goodreads, I don't rate memoirs or nonfiction, mainly because I think it's kind of strange to rate the entertainability of somebody's story in their life. But I will say some memoirs are better than others based on the actual writing. And this one I felt like was very poorly written. And that's, I don't know, I feel like that's like not a popular opinion, but I just feel like the writing of this book didn't do her story justice. It felt very cluttered and like it was hard to follow, and I felt like we were jumping between things without much organization. It just, I don't know. I'm gonna put it in was hoping for more, and I say that not because of her story, but simply because this book was really hyped up, and I just felt like the way it was written didn't do justice to her story. Next, we have Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan, and I think this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I'm going to put this in yikes. Hear me out. I think Annabelle Monaghan is a really great author, and as you'll see, some of the other books she's written to me are very, very good. But this one, if I'm being honest, I don't know why people like it. It's really weird to me. I think the reason why I think it's so strange is because when you're reading it, like kind of what happens is she like writes a screenplay, I guess you could say, about her life and her story, and it gets picked up to be a movie. And so they're filming part of the movie on her property. And so the main male character, like the actor who is like playing her ex-husband essentially, it like he ends up, I don't know, he basically ends up like ditching his life and like staying on her porch. Except it was like so strange because she just kind of like let it happen. And that's the part where I was like, what are you doing? Like, this is this strange man. He's obviously like an alcoholic. And you're just gonna like let him into your home and let him roam your home where your children are staying and like not bat an eye. I don't know, like stranger danger. Like, I know he's an actor, but like that's not okay. And I just couldn't get past that about how like none of this, like it wasn't even like oh, it's unbelievable, but it's a fun romance. Like, no, like why are you, call the police? I don't know. I just couldn't with this book. And so it's a yikes for me. Next, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. And this is the first and only Emily Henry book that I've read. I really need to read more, but I just kind of have found that I'm just not like a purely romance reader, even though I've heard that Emily Henry's books are a little bit more like literally like women's fiction with romance, and I need to pick up more of her books, but I just haven't. But I really did like Beach Read. The first video that I ever put up on YouTube, I read this book in. I would put it in loved but not top tier. In that video, if you watch it, I actually did rate it 5 stars, but I have since lowered that rating, not because this book is bad, but because I read another book, which we'll talk about, that completely changed my perception of how romance novels should be. So this one kind of had to get dropped down, but I still really like it, and I think it's really good. Next, we have Red Rising, and I'm going to put this in forgettable. I, truth be told, thought I would like this one a little bit more than I did, and maybe, I don't know, this one's kind of a hard one, because like maybe I would recommend it, but I feel like there's a very specific person you have to recommend this to. Like, for instance, I have this book on hold at our library because I want my husband to read it because I think he would like it because it's like sci-fi. I thought the story was interesting, but I just don't really have much desire to read the second one. And maybe I'll move this up to was hoping for more. Mainly, I don't know, it was hyped up by some people that I like kind of agree with on books, and it just fell flat for me, and I wish I liked it more. And maybe someday I'll pick up the second one and continue it and just see kind of where it goes, but for right now, I feel like I'm kind of content not. Next, we have The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry, which I read in one sitting on a plane. And it was so good. I was like, we were about to land and I had like 10 pages left and I was like crying. And I was like, please, I just need to finish this book. I would put it in would recommend, but don't ever think about, because I don't ever think about it, but it was really, really, really good. You just kind of go along with this man's life and everything he kind of goes through and his story and the things he encounters. It doesn't necessarily have like a plot, it's just sort of his life, but it's very interesting and I just think it's really sweet. It's funny at times, it's heart-wrenching at times, it's a little comical. Like, I just really liked it and I would recommend it. Next we have The Bodyguard by Catherine Center, which is said book that changed my perception of romance books and wish I could read again for the first time. If a romance book does not make me feel the way this book felt, it will never be a 5 stars. That's just the facts. This book is 6 stars and it's a league of its own. Incredible. And to the point where I'm scared to read other Catherine Center books because what if they don't live up to this, you know? Next we have Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monahan. I'll put it in would recommend, but don't ever think about it. This one was definitely better than Nora Goes Off Script for me, but yeah, but I just don't ever think about it. Next we have the Dreamkeeper Saga. This is another one of those series that I'll just kind of pick up if I need something that I'll know I'll kind of enjoy, but I don't really think about very often. This one I'll put in forgettable, not because I think it's bad, but because it's like it really isn't going to leave much of a lasting impact on me, but I think it's cute and fun. I feel kind of bad about that one, but it's fun. Next we have The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. I'll put this one in loved but not top tier. I feel like I would have liked this one better if I would have read it first in the series, but I just didn't. And the reason why is because I didn't know. I'm currently reading Empire of Storms, so I'm really in the thick of the Throne of Glass series. But when I was starting this series, I didn't know that it had like a prequel. So I just was like, oh, I want to read Throne of Glass, and so I typed in Throne of Glass and like checked out the Throne of Glass book, and I didn't realize that The Assassin's Blade was supposed to be a prequel and like you can read it at different times. So I didn't end up reading this one first, which I wish I would have, because I think one would have impacted the story of the first book more, and 2, I think it would have made more sense and not have felt so kind of random. I read it, I think, third, mainly because I just needed to read it, and I realized it existed after I had read the first one, and that's when they recommended to read it, was third, and it was good. I wish I would have read it first, and I think it would have been rated higher if I would have. So, loved but not top tier. Next we have Summer Romance by Annabelle Monahan, and this one to me, I'll put in loved but not top tier. This one redeemed Annabelle Monahan for me. I loved this book. I thought the story was really cute. It's a cute romance. Again, redeemed Annabelle Monahan for me, because obviously this didn't do us very good. Next we have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and truth be told, I was hoping for more. This was the first romance book that I had read in years and years and years, and I thought I would like a little bit more because people were talking about like the magical realism in it and some of the fun themes, and this one just didn't like hit the mark for me. I think I just didn't find the male main character very interesting, and there was kind of a few themes in there that just I don't really prefer reading, and so it just kind of fell flat for me, which I was disappointed about. Next we have A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, which is the third book in the ACOTAR series, which I only read the first 3. Maybe I'll pick up the last 2 one of these times, but for now I'm content with the first 3. I'll go ahead and start out with A Court of Thorns and Roses. This one's hard. I'll say I'll put this in would recommend but don't ever think about, mainly because this book I feel like almost could be like a standalone. Even though it's not, but I don't ever think about it. But obviously it's the first one in the series, so like I would recommend it. Next we have A Court of Mist and Fury. I would put this in loved but not top tier. And I would also put A Court of Wings and Ruin in loved but not top tier. I just think this isn't a 5-star series for me. I loved it, but Throne of Glass to me like outranks it every time in every way, and so that's why I feel like I can't put these in Wish I Could Read for the First Time again, but still incredible. Next we have The Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie, and I would put this in would recommend but don't ever think about. Lisa Jewell, None of This Is True. I'll put this in was hoping for more. I liked this book, but I feel like, and I think maybe this one's on me, I think I'm getting fatigued by the like podcast mystery setting style books. They're just kind of becoming redundant to me. Like I feel like every like thriller mystery coming out is like set like someone's doing a podcast, and then they like it's getting old in my opinion, and I'm just not really a fan. So I'll say, actually I'll put this one in would recommend but don't ever think about, because I feel like this is the first one of those that I read, and now I kind of keep reading them and it's just sort of like eh. Next we have Divine Rivals. I loved Divine Rivals. I'll put this in loved but not top tier. I haven't read the second one because people talk about how much they don't like the second one, and so I think I'm just gonna let this book stand on its own for me. I loved the characters. I just feel like they're so sweet. It was such a different take on kind of a fantasy setting style of book. It felt much softer, it felt much sweeter. The characters felt kind of like a historical fiction but fantasy, and I just really loved it. Roman, the main character, I just think there isn't another fantasy male main character written like him. He's so sweet, so tender, and it was just refreshing to read about such a wholesome, beautiful relationship. Next we have Powerful by Lauren Roberts, and this one, I'll put in would recommend but don't ever think about. I thought as far as novellas go, this one was like one of the better ones, and I am really hoping that the kind of character that was introduced in this book and the story that was kind of presented will impact the third book in the Powerless series. Next we have Once Upon a Broken Heart. I very much enjoyed this series. There's 3 of them in the series, but I'm only seeing 2 on here, so I must have forgotten. I'll put this in loved but not top tier. Same with The Ballad of Never After. I feel like a lot of people didn't love how that series ended, but I kind of liked it. I thought it was nice, so I don't know. That one was good for me. Reckless, I'm gonna put in was hoping for more. Next we have Legendary by Caraval. Considering that I kind of can't remember what happens in these books, I'm going to put these as, I'm going to put them as forgettable. This, I will put I would put Caraval as in would recommend but don't ever think about, mainly because the story of Caraval of like the first book I really liked. I really liked Scarlett and Julian. I think they're great characters. I didn't like Donatella. I didn't like Donatella from the beginning, and so when the rest of the series focused on her and her story, it just like I was out. I read them, they were fine books. I kind of honestly can't really remember what happens because I just didn't care. Next we have The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and I would put that in would recommend but don't ever think about. It was a great mystery thriller. I thought it was really good. If people ask me for a recommendation for mystery thrillers, this is the one that I tell them. So it was a good book. Next we have Dinner for Vampires. I recently read this one. I would put it in loved but not top tier, mainly because I don't wish I could read it again for the first time, just because her story was like really sad in some parts, and yeah, it made me sad for her, the things that she went through, so I wouldn't want to experience reading that again. But very, very well written. Next we have Five Survive by Holly Jackson, and I'll put this one in would recommend but don't ever think about. I actually really, really liked this book. A lot of people said this one was their least favorite by Holly Jackson, but to me it kind of ranks up there a little bit higher, mainly because I felt like it was different. I feel like we'll talk about the reappearance of Rachel Price a little bit later, but to me, the Good Girls Guide to Murder series ended very poorly. I didn't like how it ended. It just wasn't my favorite. I didn't enjoy the way she took the characters. The reappearance of Rachel Price felt kind of like a regurgitation of A Good Girls Guide to Murder ending, and I just didn't love it. It was nice to see that Holly Jackson could write something a little bit different, and it was still good. So next we have In the Heart of the Linden Wood, which is kind of a random book that I found. I'll put that in Loved But Not Top Tier. I came across it really randomly. It's a little fantasy story, and it just takes place in the Linden Wood, and you just kind of follow a bunch of different characters and their stories and how they all kind of converge, and it's really sweet. There's like some heart-wrenching parts, there's some very sweet moments, and I just really enjoyed how all their stories came together, and I really liked it. I think it's a hidden gem. I don't think it's well known at all, but if you ever come across this book, I would highly recommend it, and the cover is beautiful. So next we have Throne of Glass. I'll put this one in Loved But Not Top Tier. Here we have Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods. I'm going to put this one in Was Hoping for More. I talked about this a little bit earlier. I was really excited to dive back into Percy Jackson. It just kind of fell flat for me and wasn't my favorite. Here we have the reappearance of Rachel Price, and this one was a yikes for me. Well, that's mean. This one was forgettable for me. I just didn't think it was impressive. Again, the podcast thing is getting old in my opinion, and I just felt like it was a regurgitation of A Good Girls Guide to Murder, and I thought, you can do better. We have House of Hades, which I'm gonna put this one in Was Hoping for More. This one I had a really hard time getting through. I love this series. I think it's incredible. It's the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan, and this one just it's the second to last one in the series, and it fell very flat for me. It was so long, and I just felt like we were trudging through Hades the whole time, and it took forever to get to where we needed to go, and I wasn't a fan. But then on the other hand, we have Blood of Olympus, which is the last book in that series, and I am putting this one in I wish I could read for the first time again. It wrapped up so well. It was such a good book, and I couldn't have asked for a better way to end the series, and I really liked it. So next we have Crown of Midnight by Sarah J Maas, and I will put this one in Wish I Could Read for the first time again. I talked about this book a little bit in one of my vlogs, and this one just it gave me the feelings of like when I was in middle school and getting like giddy about a book. It just was so fun to read, and it was one of those that I knew that I would wish I could read for the first time again when I finished it, and so I just wanted to like soak it up and enjoy it. So Crown of Midnight for me, top tier. Now we have Listen for the Lie. Yikes. Again, podcast, boo, done it, let's move on. There was a scene in this book that gave me such a visceral ick that I can't get past it. We're gonna move on. We have Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, and honestly, forgettable. Heir of Fire, I would put this in Loved But Not Top Tier. I didn't think I would rate this book so highly until the end. The ending is what made me rate it high. Probably the last like 40% of the book. The first like 60% of the book I had a harder time getting through, but the last was so good, and so I had to rate it so highly because of the end of the book. That's why I probably wouldn't put it in Wish I Could Read Again for the first time, but absolutely loved, just not quite up there. Next we have Powerless. I'll also put this in Loved But Not Top Tier. Next we have Spectacular, which, yikes. This is a holiday novella that takes place in the Caraval world. I thought this was going to be a fun little Christmassy holiday time. I'll spare you the details. That's bad. We have The Fury by Alex Michaelides, and I'm gonna say Was Hoping. I'm putting it in Forgettable. I'll put it in Was Hoping for More. I love The Silent Patient by him. I thought it was so good, and so I was excited to pick this one up, and honestly, it just wasn't very good. So kind of sad to end on that note, but here's the whole breakdown. The ones that we have and wish I could read again for the first time: Loved but Not Top Tier, Would Recommend but Don't Ever Think About, Was Hoping for More, Forgettable, and Yikes. I feel like this is a very accurate representation of how books like should be rated. Like, you have a few that are like the top, you've got a few that are the bad ones, but then like the ones that are kind of chunked in the middle are like a solid amount of good books that you liked. So I hope you guys enjoyed this format of video. I've obviously never done anything like this before, and I really enjoyed it. And I feel like the 2024 was such a good reading year for me, and I just hope that 2025 will also be good. I started 2025 out by reading Queen of Shadows, and I'm really in the thick of Throne of Glass, and it's so good, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Obviously 2024 was a fun year for me. I started this channel, and it's been really fun for me to just try new things. And so if you're following along, I'm really grateful that you're here, and I hope to see you here again very soon.